Hi, everyone. So excited to be here again. Have a full slate today. Hope everybody who's watching can appreciate what we're trying to do. And based on what we're trying to do, we really value uh, uh, comments, thoughts, anything we can do to steer the conversation in the most relevant way possible. And if you're a little shy and don't know what to say, just share where you're from, and that'll be a foothold we can begin with. Today's word of the day is confidence. And with that, Dave, you're always one of the more confident people on the panel. Why don't you bring everybody up to date and share your initial thoughts on confidence?
I don't know about or one of the more confident in the panel, but I definitely put on a good show. But I do have to start with, the first thought of it's always great to be here. I'm sorry I missed last week. I know there were technical difficulties, no finger pointing. Just happy I was able to watch it at least. And thinking of trust or of confidence, the first word that came to my mind was trust. Whether it's trusting in yourself or trusting in somebody else, that's what confidence is really made up of. Is confidence, trust in something, whether it's yourself or somebody else.
Okay, great start. Moving right over to Jason.
I don't know if it's our similar age or military background, but we have similar thoughts, Dave. And you stole my big to do. That's where I was gonna go. But that's great. We're in the right company, right? No, confidence. That's a word that gets thrown around a lot, and I think that back in the day we used to say be confident, not cocky. And I don't think cocky is even a word in the vocabulary anymore. Well, because it's root, but also because nowadays we have so many folks just confident in whatever they're saying, because they're saying it, And so that's what we have to be aware of, is to have that filter set up. So just because someone's confident doesn't mean they're right. And so I'll start with that.
Okay, great start. Moving right over to Charles.
Yeah, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. And one of the things when I was younger, I used to look at confidence as projecting myself into the future and imagining that confidence was like a context, not a quality, and that I was living in that context of confidence, not necessarily something that I would possess, but something that I would generate by being present and not resisting what was around me, but really kind of projecting myself into the future, imagining myself confident, and then I would sort of walk into that future of confidence. And I actually wrote this out when I was in university, and I called it the confidence theory. And I came up with a variety of different kind of concepts like this, which at the time when I was really into visualization, I called my constitution. So the confidence is part of my constitution. Whether or not I'm always confident, I don't know, but it's part of the Constitution.
Well, great take on that. Catherine?
I think it's very interesting, and I agree with the trust issue that comes along with this. And also, if someone is confident, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're right? And I think that it's something that some people do sort of try on for size, but I think true confidence actually is something that you radiate, something that comes from the inside out, comes from being aligned. And it also is very receiving to be confident, right? And it's not necessarily just going in one direction. It's a two-way street.
Well, great. I see confidence as a derivative of courage at times.
Mm-hmm.
It is, and it's a perception that you have, a belief in yourself when you move into a serious situation, whether it's in business or sports. It takes that level of belief and confidence and courage to fully believe in it. It's one thing to try to project it. It's another thing to really be able to be energized by it. And that is a hidden strength to a lot of winners or people who also are willing to go through a lot of tenacious, tumultuous situations and still come out of it feeling good no matter what the result, you know, and it's confidence in your ability to do something. And reality will share with you how well you did. But it's a building block strategy, I believe, as you gain confidence by little efforts of success that you start really believing in. And pretty soon, it doesn't take much effort to show confidence, and it really does project throughout the room. Charles is typing away with confidence. Welcome, and please tell us where you're watching. Confidence is something you have or lack. It's a way of being that you choose in the moment. And here's one more. And it says, okay, we've got that. And we've got Omar joining us. Omar is a good friend. I've been on a judge on a show twice now. And the finals are coming up for the singing show. So if you're interested in see who has a singing voice on LinkedIn, tune in. With that, thank you, Omar. And we'll go back to Dave.
Yeah, thanks, Don. I appreciate everybody's comments. And as we were going around the horn here, it occurred to me that confidence is something that, from an internal side, you gain more confidence through experience. The more times that you do something over and over, you gain more confidence in your ability and capability to do that. And therefore, you're able to better project your strength of your own confidence in a way that other people can then trust that you do know what you're talking about. So it's, again, the two-way street with trust, not just in yourself, but radiating, as Catherine, I think that was your word, radiating confidence so that other people can trust what it is that you are trying to sell, what it is you're about, what it is you're trying to convey, just in your sincerity, in your strength. Whether you're right or wrong is relevant, but if you're confident, no matter how it just comes across, you can be trustworthy, maybe because you've done it so many times. The situation may be a little bit different than every time you've done it. So maybe you could be wrong in the end, but based on past experience, you can be pretty sure / confident that it'll turn out similarly to the next time. So my point is, we can't be stagnant to be confident. We have to be experiencing life and certain criterion to make sure that the confidence is backed by something. Otherwise, it's a null set. There's nothing there behind it, and therefore the trust is not worth anything it's written on.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason?
Yeah, and I think it's very important to think about confidence as a mindset. It's how you believe, it's how you feel, kind of what we're talking about. And before we got on air, so to speak, we were talking about an event that Charles was part of, and we were talking about some very successful people that had gone to this event. And it could be very easy for someone to be like, oh my goodness, there's these people there, I don't fit in, whatever. Or you could show up and you could know that, the saying is, wherever you are, you belong. And that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, but man, I tell you what, when you get over that hump and you fully believe that, and you have confidence in yourself that you can fit into any environment, it changes your life. Things open up that you never would have thought of, And yeah, maybe other people will have something more to input or something but you always can add something to the conversation. And that comes from, we've talked about trust. That's the trust in yourself, knowing that, I know when to speak, and I know when to listen, and I know when to say, no, I don't believe that. And when to say, oh, this person is the expert on this. Maybe I'm going to, let that stand, not let that stand so much, but, understand that's probably the truth. So I think confidence comes from that inner knowing of trusting yourself, and then being confident enough to say, I'm going to show up where I'm at. To Dave's point, not to be about military all the time, but you gain confidence by doing. When they told me you're going to rappel off this 90-foot tower, I didn't have the opportunity to say no. okay, you were going to do it, and I did it. But once I did, I was like, whoa, I can do that, and I want to do it again. And it's like all things, you build. Confidence is a muscle, and it just takes that time to build it up. And so find those little things in your life that you can do every day that can build that muscle.
Yeah, that's a wonderful take on it. It kind of reminds me that you could be confident in order to master something, but you can also be confident in your ability to learn something new.
Yeah.
So at different levels, confidence comes into play, and it's just a belief in yourself saying, I don't understand it, but I'll figure it out. Or I figured it out, now I know I can probably do it, as long as you don't put time into the equation and make pressure out of it. And that could really destroy confidence in time. Catherine?
It's very interesting because what came to mind is the difference between confidence and bravado, right? And it's often so evident. And someone, I think, may have a misconception that they feel that they're being confident, but it doesn't come off that way at all. And I agree that it is something that's built over time. And I also, the other thing that came to mind is it often takes confidence to say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not, accepting that. I'm not contributing to that. And I think it does take confidence and over a period of time, sometimes for people to stand up for themselves and set those boundaries.
Great share there. Charles?
Yeah, I think I might be having some connection problems here. I hope that you can hear me all right. What I want to add is I think as I was listening to Jason sharing, it reminded me about the role of fear and willingness with confidence. And confidence is not necessarily the absence of fear, but the willingness to be with fear without letting it dictate your actions. So fear doesn't necessarily disappear, but it's something that you can manage. So you can have fear. One of the ways to look at it, you can have fear instead of fear having you. So fear doesn't disappear. You just stop letting it mean something to you, or you just stop letting it, have you by the throat type of thing. Fear is no longer in charge. It's just something that you're aware of. And if you actually really break it down, fear actually comes down to being a sensation. And you can do a lot of, soul searching when you're jumping off the tower, for example, Jason, about what fear you might be feeling. And well, actually, what does that fear feel like? Well, it's a sensation in my chest or a sensation in my stomach, maybe a little bit of nausea or something like that. And you label it fear. So these are some of the ways that people can be present to fear, but not let fear have
Great
them.
comments. And, to Catherine's point about bravado, you typically find someone who has unjustified confidence and you label them a know-it-all, right? I mean, they come across as they know everything and they can do everything and there's nothing there to really put your finger on. And, the other element that's so important with confidence is your ability to do it naturally and get away from that know everything and everybody. And it's how you not only talk, but how your body language is, how you stand up straight, how you show up, how you look people in the eye. So there's a lot of tells that you can master. Dave comes in with a comment, believe you can, you're halfway there. Theodore Roosevelt, I'm a big believer in that. Confidence comes not from always being right, but from not fearing to be wrong. Hey, that's a good one. Leslie's here, our good friend. Me and Catherine know her so well, must have done 40 Saturdays together. So always great to see Leslie, one of the stars on LinkedIn, who deserves the confidence she exudes. Charles, confidence isn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to be with fear without letting it dictate your actions. And with that, moving on to Dave.
Yeah, I think I like how we've brought in the notion of fear as because it really goes back to the first words you said, Don, when we started the show, is having courage to do something despite And that's what courage is having the ability in the confidence in ourselves, the trust in ourselves to go beyond fear. And that's what courage really is defined as, in my opinion. Confidence in yourself has to come first, in my opinion, because other people are going to have confidence in you left, right, and center. But if you don't believe it in your own abilities, that is, then nothing will ever come to pass. To Jason's point, the instructors knew that you could rappel down that wall, but you had to get the confidence, you had to get beyond the fear through courage to build the confidence in yourself first. Otherwise, you would have been, I know you can't say no in the Marine Corps, obviously, especially during basic training, but let's say I were to go do that just for an experience, I could say no. But if I can get through my own courage and through the fear, through courage, I can become confident in myself. And that's when I'm going to make that leap. And so many of us are afraid to make the leap, whether it's coming on a show like this here. Public speaking in general, I think, is one of the largest fears people have. But when you have the confidence in yourself, know that you're going to get through whatever experience it is you're going through, then it's no problem.
Great take on it, Jason.
Yeah, to Don's point and Catherine's point, I think it's very important that we look past the bravado, and be very sure of confidence. And there's times when you put it on and you wear it, like we've been talking about. It could be it's a mask you could be wearing, and confidence looks a lot of different ways for a lot of different people. My mom passed away 13 years ago, but she was a silent sufferer, and she had that really quiet strength. That's who Mom was. And she dealt with 3 different types of cancers and just dealt with it and took care of herself and stuff like that. And I share that just because of that courage that it took her to do. And so confidence on Mom looked different. She was about 5'6". She was a small little person, and you wouldn't look at her and go, oh, she's confident, but she knew what she knew. And she was a loving, caring person. And through that, her confidence came through as caring. And so it wasn't like somebody that's, that strength and that, oh, I'm confident. It doesn't have to be that way, because you have to also be willing to say, confident to say, I don't know. Mm-hmm. This panel here is full of very accomplished, amazing people. And, it takes a lot of confidence, I think, to come here and join everyone and speak my piece and say, and not be like, oh, well, they're also accomplished and have done so much in their careers and they know so much and they have so much wisdom. I come on and I feel, well, first of all, because we're community and we all love each other, and that's who we are. So that's very important too. You find where you fit in, mm-hmm. But also no one here is like, well, I know more than you. Everyone here is like, well, this is what I know. What do you know? And so I can find that inner confidence through your caring and your openness. And so it's like, what room are you in to find that confidence? Sitting in a room by yourself, it might be harder to find your confidence.
Yeah, great point, and a wonderful personal share that I certainly appreciate. Charles says, fear doesn't disappear. You just stop letting it mean something about you. Confidence is fear that's no longer in charge. Great point. Leslie comes back with, confidence is the byproduct of achievement. So true. Courage is the desire to do something we have never done in service that is so compelling that fear takes a back seat. Right on. Confidence is built on what we believe. We believe all 6 fears every time we see them. We've got confidence as a muscle that grows in direct proportion to its use. The use is achieving goals with consistency over time. Dave is, you are the only person on earth who can use your abilities, Zig Ziglar, and I was just listening to his tape actually. If you want to know what you believe Leslie says about your ability and deservability, your results will be an exact match to it. Mm-hmm. MOI. And public speaking is fear of judgment or criticism. The first of the 6 basic fears. Fear of poverty is second. And you can be confident without people around. How many times you take a walk and there's a spark in your step, as you're leaning into things, and you just feel like this is your day, and you're okay, and confidence in yourself has to come first. You can't be underconfident and try to exude confidence. It just won't sell properly. And I think those are key elements, and it's something you have to wear every day. It's not something you just assume is going to be there. You've got to build for it. And I think part of it is giving yourself credit, and confidence also comes from someone else giving you credit. I'm sure if you're in the military and your supervisor said, man, that was the best I ever saw someone do, whether you thought it at the time, you start believing it now. And it shows you how you can move confidence to and through people with the ability to motivate those people into being stronger, more confident people. Catherine?
Oh, it's so fun. Leslie, when you made your comment there, I had just written down that, that old Confucius saying, if you believe you can, you can. If you believe you can't, right? And so I think there's a lot of truth in that. Oh my gosh. The other thing that comes to mind too is I think it's important to be confident in our curiosity and in our self-evaluation, and be confident that we will evaluate ourselves realistically and also accurately, right? That we're not fooling ourselves on the inside, because we get so much information when we can evaluate ourselves and, what was I thinking that caused me to take that action, or to think that next thought, or whatever it is. And I think that it does take confidence in order to go through that self-evaluatory process, because sometimes it's not very comfortable, right?
Absolutely. Charles?
Yeah, still having some connection problems here. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yeah, you're doing great.
Yep.
Oh, I think
Well,
I've
still
lost
here.
you.
I hear you.
You're here. We're here.
Oh, I'm still clear? Okay, great. Well, one thing I want people to consider that might be listening to this is that confidence is not a personality trait. It's a way of engaging with life. And because I think we need to look at it from a growth mindset perspective. Too often people look at it from a fixed mindset and they think, oh, I'm not confident. And if they look at it from a fixed mindset, then they can't overcome that, whatever it is that's stopping them from being confident. And so another way to look at it is that confidence is like making a declaration, taking a stand, and making that declaration, taking that stand, then shapes reality. And confidence, the world then rearranges itself around you, around that declaration that you're going to be confident, or that you are confident, regardless of what feelings you might have, fear or whatever, in the moment. For example, when you step on stage. And the one thing I would add, I can see that Leslie's labeled a couple of different levels of fear here. I'm sure that in the top 6, going to the dentist is one of the top fears.
Yeah, no kidding. And I'll share some of Leslie's comments. Public speaking is fear of judgment or criticism. The first of the 6 basic fears. Fear of poverty is second. I'm not confident to go on a trip by myself. Which fear is that? We've got Confucius and Henry Ford. Then we have you have to stand in the face of fear, do it afraid. And coming back with it's being so inspired to walk through fear. We have 6. And, what I see is, the Nike slogan fits everything so well, just do it. If you're standing on a diving board for the first time, and that can be really scary, especially if you're a young child and there's a lot of distance, and there's water underneath you, but that doesn't mean it's going to be comfortable. And sometimes you just bite the bullet and do it, and even if you don't agree, even if you're not your favorite thing, but just being able to overcome what was a perceived fear. And that's the key. Where does it match reality? Some people are afraid to eat broccoli. Not afraid, but they just are freaked out by it. But, once you do it, at least you understand what it is instead of trying to interpret or draw insight into it. And plus, I've always found the best way to deal with fear is dealing with it, not talking about it, not thinking about it, but approaching it. And it's funny how things disappear as you start to engage it. Make your enemy your friend in a way, so you can have a quality conversation. And it takes a lot to really build that confidence over time. And some people are unshakable. I mean, you're in their presence and nothing's going to stop them. They're just not going to be denied. And I think I read a little bit from someone today is how do you beat someone who won't quit? Right? You can't, because they keep coming back and they keep coming back, and eventually they wear you down for just coming back so often. And I think that's, important. And I think the other thing about confidence is learning, reading. Ignorance is the biggest fear one can have, right? Once you understand what you're dealing with, no matter how bad it is, at least you know what you're dealing with. It's that unknown. It's walking into a dark room and imagining all kinds of things. We got Leslie really geared up today. Okay, here we go. The other four are fear of illness, loss of love, old age, and death. Comes back with off shortly to my standing 11:30. Make room for me one Thursday. Looks like you can fix it in 6. I definitely will. Always nice to see old hands here. Fears are not perceived. They are real and further embedded with faith when we think of them again. We earned our stripes through our fears. What we resist persists, choose it, and it disappears. Thank you. And I love you guys. Well, and I think love can go a long way towards confidence. When you're the recipient of love, it's amazing what you can do. If you got your whole family saying, "Hey, we believe in you. You're gonna nail this thing. We're there for you." So it's not singular strength, but collective strength that can make you go ahead. Or, there was a little story about somebody offering someone $10,000 if they could walk between 2 windows on a rope. And the person says, "No way. I wouldn't do that. It's too dangerous." But if your child was at the other window, you'd run across that without even thinking about it. So it's the situation and condition. Sometimes you have the luxury of saying no. Other times it's not an option. So I think that's important. I don't know where I left off. I think it was, okay, now we're back to Dave. Because I'm usually after Charles, but I always interject.
Not to worry at all. I don't really have too much else to add. I was just thinking back to Jason's comments about confidence, and the word that crossed my mind was we share amongst ourselves here in this great group because we're not arrogant. And the opposite of me for confidence here would, we can talk about self-confidence, and that's the ability and trust in ourselves and our abilities to share and to get in front of the group here and to share our thoughts. But for me to come out and say my way is the right way is pretty arrogant. And that's the opposite of confidence. That shows the fear. One of the 6 fears that Leslie was talking about. I appreciate her sharing those. It's a lack of confidence in ourselves when we get too arrogant. It was just a thought that I had very briefly while we were all talking.
Yeah, I think that's important for the measure of fairness. And I think that's something that should be considered. Jason?
Yeah, another definition for confidence is feeling certain about the truth of something. And, to Dave's point, sometimes we think if we're bigger, louder, stronger, that our truth becomes the truth. And so that's that braggadocious that we said earlier, and that's that, those things that where it gets mixed up. And so don't mistake confidence for being right, because you can be very confident, but be confident in the fact that and say, you know what, I'm not sure. The saying that comes up a lot that always reminds me of is that when people say, well, in my opinion, well, here's the reality. Everything you say is in your opinion. Unless you're quoting a study, unless you're quoting, something, it's your opinion. And, if you've ever seen scientific studies where coffee's good for you, and then, oh, coffee's bad for you. Oh, wine's good for you. Oh, wine's bad for you. Who's doing the study? So, there's always a lot of truths out there that might not be the truth. But, so as we say it, that's it. So if you take everyone for that at that level, well, yeah, that's your opinion. That's how you feel. That's okay. And if you speak from that place, not, well, I'm saying it, so it's the definitive truth, because my truth might not be your truth. And so you come from there. Something else I wanted to share real quick, as we're talking about fear. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, of course, but there's a mindfulness meditation. It's called the mountain meditation, and it's about fear. And ultimately, there's a monster at the top of the hill, and there's a village at the bottom of the hill, and there's a little girl that gets curious. And she hears the roaring of the monster, and so she wants to go up the mountain. And of course, this is a meditation, so it's very, it explores and explains. But basically, she keeps getting closer to the top of the mountain to where the monster is, and the monster keeps getting smaller. And when she gets to the top of the mountain, there's this fairly little small thing, and she said, "What's your name?" And he says, "I am fear," and he disappears, because she had the courage to go up there. She had the confidence in herself that she could handle whatever she saw up there, because she was curious about what was up there. And like, why are we all afraid of this? What's going on? And through her confidence, she found her courage, and then fear disappeared. So I just wanted to bring that up because we're talking about fear and how that ties in.
Yeah, it's a wonderful story. It kind of reminds me of the movie The Sandlot.
Right.
If you're familiar with that, and that dog that seemed like a dinosaur and it wasn't nearly as bad. Catherine?
That's so funny, because that brought to mind when I was, oh gosh, maybe 3 or 4 years old. There was this movie called the Cyclops, right? And it was an old black and white movie, and this grotesque figure with one eye in the middle, right? And I spent a couple of nights thinking there was one of those under my bed. And it was just like, oh, no, this is not going to keep working for me. So you do have to get curious and say, what's going on down there, right? And Don, what came to mind when you were talking about when you receive love and encouragement from other people, and that boosts our confidence also, I think that brings to mind that when we learn to actually love and respect ourselves, our confidence blossoms with it, right? Because we're always going into the unknown. We can think that we know what's going to happen this afternoon or tomorrow, but we don't. And so it takes some real confidence to say, hey, I am ready to go. Whatever's coming my way, here I am. And I'm confident that I am going to be able to meet the unknown from a place of curiosity, a place of love, a place of expansion, and a place of and service as well. What can I do to help other people along with me? I think we all have to help ourselves, and then when we can parlay that out to helping other people too, it makes a huge difference in our level of confidence, because that comes back to nobody's better than another. No one really knows more than another. Our experiences are very much different, and that informs how we tend to view things.
Yeah, so well put. I have stories like that from my childhood, that I used to have to put the light on for about a week straight in my bedroom before I could go to bed, because of the fear of what was lurking out there. Leslie says, thank you for allowing me to be me confidently. You all know the real me. And there is no such thing as a fixed mindset. Nothing is fixed. Things do not stop. They're growing or disintegrating per the law of vibration. And what it reminds me of is when, again, you have confidence through others or through a cause, right? How many people run marathons and do special things for causes that they wouldn't have done without it, because the purpose was bigger than themselves. And anytime you involve yourself in something bigger than yourself, it's not about yourself. And anytime you insert yourself in a team, there's shared confidence, right? You know the person next to you is going to take care of business when it's their turn. And that gives you confidence. And then you don't want to let people down. You know, people will let themselves down far easier than they'll let other people down, right? They get embarrassed when they say, well, I got to go home early now, right? And they'll stay there longer than they normally would. Or they'll eat something they don't like, but they know how much love and time was put into creating it. And you don't want to put that out there. And, you know, I think being a good person also adds to your confidence. You know, if you're pleasant, if you're polite, if you're respectful, and when you're showing confidence, it's more based on some level of modesty or humility versus that bravado. You know, if you come jumping up and down and screaming and everything else, that's not confident, that's show business. You know, a lot of times, like Jason mentioned, it's that quiet confidence. A lot of people are real confident. They don't talk a lot because they don't have to. They're not out there proving anything. To them, they're already there. Now they're trying to help others. And I think they're also open to more questions. You know, when you question somebody and they take offense, they're not that confident, you know, because what got that person going? I didn't say anything that bad, or if there was, I'd like to know about it. And all of a sudden that false bravado just falls away, you know, and desperation and just throwing stuff against the wall starts to take place. Okay.
And Charles is backstage too.
Yeah. Okay. Backstage. Okay. I
Waiting
don't
to come
know.
in, I think.
Yeah, I don't. It was showing before. Well, I'll share Charles' comment first, and then see if I can share Charles. Confidence is a thing you choose, not a feeling you wait for. Declare yourself confident and act from that declaration. The world will rearrange itself to match. I see the private chat. I'm backstage. Now, this is where we were last week with the backstage.
Oh boy.
I thought I had it figured out. Nothing shows up. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Okay, maybe I learned something. There's so
There he
much,
is.
there's so little geography on this screen. If you don't, sometimes it's like you'll press anything just to see if something will work, or you ever look for something you lost in places you never put it there, but you still have to open that drawer. Charles, welcome back.
Thank you.
To hear what you have to say.
Yeah, well, I love the conversation. And what I would add is another aspect of confidence is the trap of comparative confidence. And a lot of times confidence is relative, and people feel confident because they're comparing themselves to others. For example, saying, well, I'm smarter than that person, or they're smarter than me, or they're better on stage than I am, or they did a better presentation than I did. And that's really a false confidence. It's a false illusion. And, you know, people know well, they just need to be aware that in that moment that confidence becomes a prison. It's a little bit like what I was talking about earlier about fear, that if you have a sensation of a lack of confidence, fear can have you, or you can just have the feeling and the sensations of fear and still step into it. And it's the same thing when you get into comparative confidence. Confidence then becomes a prison, and the comparing yourself to another person has you, as opposed to you just being aware that you may, as a human being, have a tendency to compare yourself, and it gets all down into ego and things like that. It's just another interesting cut at confidence.
Yeah, that is so true. And what comes to mind is a lot of times confidence gets confused with stubbornness. You know, is I'm not budging, I'm not moving. and they come across as strong instead of just resistant, and I think confidence has to be continually energized. What are you basing it on, right? If you do something wrong all the time, you can't be that confident in it. Or put it this way, it won't be one of your strong points, And I think just knowing that to be confident, you have to stay strong by learning, by sharing, and by listening. And most confidence is usually confused with overwhelming somebody with their strength.
Right.
And there's something to being subtle about something. Even, sometimes you can hit it with a hammer, but it's not necessary. It doesn't take that much force. So I think having a little kindness with your confidence and being a little bit more empathetic in your confidence. And a lot of times confidence, again, gets confused with strength instead of being able to work with somebody and get better for it than you would have without them. Dave?
Yeah, a lot of great points. I'm just going to build a little bit, I think, on what Catherine had said. As I was, preparing for the show, a little bit looking up confidence, and so, we always look for quotes. There's one that came up here was confidence is preparation. Everything else is beyond your control. Richard Klein, and it reminded me of something. The way you had put it out, Catherine, went back to Jason's boot camp experience with the wall. Nobody's going to let you. You've got to prepare for it. In boot camp, they're not going to let you jump right to the wall the first day. They're going to build you up, make sure you're strong enough to be able to handle the rope. You're going to be strong enough, preparation for public speaking. You practice in front of a mirror, in front of a group of people smaller than what it is you're going to be, or instead of strangers, in front of friends, to give you confidence that what you're saying can be conveyed, that your wording, your timing, your pathway is correct. That's the preparation. Everything else we can't control. Is the lighting right? Is the technology going to work the way we want it to? Mm-hmm. Is the audience going to receive what we're saying the way we mean it? Or are they going to receive it positively or negatively? Out of our control. If I can't control it, why am I worried about it? But if I can be confident in everything I've done beforehand, I've succeeded. And I should take some not solace, but some positive feedback from that for myself.
Great point. Jason?
Yeah, and being confident starts with the first step. So if someone's watching this and they're like, well, you're all talking about you have confidence and you're doing this and you're doing that and you're right there talking to folks, and well, how do I start? You start with that first step. Mm-hmm. I'm confident not because I know everything. I'm confident because I know I don't know everything.
Right. Yeah.
That's where it starts with, is like, I'm like, sure, tell me, teach me, please. I'm showing up as me and being genuine and in my knowledge, and I know that I have so much more to learn. And that's why I'm confident. It's about being firm. The reed that can blow in the wind is the one that's going to survive. The stiff tree is going to fall over because it's, if it doesn't have deep roots and on and on. But be flexible. Say, I don't know. My Huna teacher shares from his teacher the saying that says, think not that all knowledge comes from your school. And that goes to like what we learn and stuff like that. But that's the mindset that I have. I don't know everything. I'm learning every day. And because of that, I could be confident. I can have a conversation because I know I can add something to it. And I know someone could add more, and I'm open to it. So I think it's very important to come from that place. And within that, when you go to do something new and you want to build confidence in it, like to Dave's point, it's a muscle. You have to build it. Mm-hmm. Do something. Do one thing that you can do, or maybe that you can't do, and try it. And that's how you get past that fear, is you just do something and you make something happen, and then you go from there.
Great point. Great point. Reminds me of the saying that I'll share when it's my turn. Catherine?
Your show, your turn.
Exactly.
Charles, it's so interesting when you were talking about comparative confidence. And then Don, you said something about stubbornness. So what came to mind for me there was that comparative confidence that sometimes translates into superiority, and how people come through with that type of attitude, and then also realizing that the ugly underbelly of superiority is that inferiority that goes to that comparative process.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think people get in that cycle of being stuck there. And so it's like so many things when we're working to, create new habits. Sometimes you need that pattern interrupt to go, oh, all right, I can look at this a little differently.
Yeah, wonderful point. Charles.
Yeah, I love this conversation. It reminds me a lot about that's sometimes confidence is an expression of people who are actually not confident, and they're using confidence as a tool or a weapon. Whereas I think the last couple of comments that have been made reminds me of Lao Tzu, that famous philosopher, where he said, "The one who knows does not speak. The confident need not prove." For example, a master archer doesn't boast of skill. The arrow's flight speaks and demonstrates the confidence instead of him actually saying he's confident. And I think we saw that. I can't remember what's the name of that show about the soccer coach who goes to the UK.
Oh,
Ted
Ted
Lasso.
Lasso.
Ted Lasso, the dart scene is a good example of that when he's in the bar and he gets challenged by the billionaire for a dart competition. And he doesn't boast, he doesn't say anything. He just tells a story about that. Nobody asked him, "Have you ever played darts before?" They just assumed that he hadn't and didn't know anything about darts. But in reality, he had, and he won that competition. So, an example of the master archer not boasting of his skill, but the darts in that case spoke of his skill.
Yeah, that's so poignant and relevant. What I was going to say is, when your why's big enough, you figure out the how to. And that's where confidence comes from, is where you're just undeniable. You're just going to win. You don't know how long it's going to take. You don't know how much it's going to take, but you're committed to it. And that quiet confidence to me is the strongest confidence. If you see those old Western movies and the marshal would show up and he'd walk in, but you knew he just had something about him, that could just change a room. And there's people like that. They say Frank Sinatra had that talent, that certain people would walk in a room and you wouldn't even know who they were and the room would change, right? Because they were in the presence of something very important and special, but nothing that was telegraphed to them. If you got to tell everybody about you and why and this and that, you've lost everything, because now you're selling instead of projecting, and if it just happens because it exudes from you, that's genuine or more permanent confidence. And there's a joy to confidence, not always based on fear, but based on the feeling it gives you. When you walk into for an exam, right? There's always that trepidation. We talked about the dentist. And I always was afraid of the dentist, especially in the earlier days. They had drills that they used their foot pedal with. So it wasn't that consistent, right? And it occurred to me, and again, you have to rationalize that the worst part was the drilling and all that stuff that went with it. But I said to myself, how long is this going to take from the beginning to the end of the drill? And it was about 10 or 15 seconds. And I said, I can count down 15 seconds no matter what's going on if I know in 15 seconds it's going to disappear. And so you have to really categorize what it is you're dealing with and why is it that it's giving you resistance or trepidation, and overcoming it by rationalization can make so much difference. Dave.
Yeah, I don't really have too much to add, to be honest with you. I mean, I think it's been a great conversation. I know we're coming up on the 50-minute mark. I mean, just having confidence in ourselves is is an important aspect when we talk about a world, and to one of Charles's comments here, where we're comparing ourselves against everybody else in the social media world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very tough to, especially for the younger generation who hasn't had the experiences that we've had and the timeline of experiences that we've had, to be self-confident, because they're always comparing themselves to each other because of social media. It's tough, and it's an important aspect that we have to instill in them, that the positives. And I always go back in my mind, Don, it's really struck me as I'm now distant from my daughter, and how I'm trying to, parent from 9 hours away. How you've always brought up through the last year and a half, how many times do we tell a child no in the first year of life? And what do they hear? And their confidence from that. So I've had to try to not taper, but to tender my parenting a little bit differently, to build up self-confidence in her, that she's strong in herself and in her own right, not compared to everybody else, as I'm sure she's doing. And I know, and I hear it every day in school. She's not on social media, but I know she's comparing herself to others. But I'm trying to build that self-confidence in her, that she's enough. And that is the greatest accomplishment, that she knows that she's enough, that we each know that we're enough despite a world trying to change us.
Well, that's beautiful, because it's nice to know that things we say and do ripple with and through others. And lessons learned that maybe we had a higher price to pay, someone else can get the benefit. And I think that's what's so beautiful about these collective collaborations and thought.
I just wish that I'd found this. You told me that like 10 years ago, since she turns 17 tomorrow. Maybe I would have had a different parenting tack for the last 10 years.
Well, I took it one step further with my grandkids, and actually today is a lunch with them. It's getting towards the end of summer vacation, so we're going to go to lunch and maybe get a few things they might need. But the day they were born, I said, I will never say a negative word to them. I will never label them with something that makes them step back and think, am I good enough? Or what was wrong with me? Because that's a lack of my discipline. And time is so fleeting and so short with the people you love. Why would you mix anything like negativity into it? There is something to being realistic and sharing the truth, but you can put it in a nice, flavorful way that makes people want to listen more.
Mm-hmm.
And if you become the person who is the magnet, because, hey, every time I'm around that person, they really find value in me. And I recite the accomplishments. I said, hey, Leo, I got to be so proud of you. You went on the swim team this year, and you're playing 2 types of saxophone now, and you made an honor society, and you did this. Give yourself some credit. Pat yourself on the back. Let's get happy here, because that's the reason why you want to keep doing it, because someone cares. I mean, I grew up without really a father. And it was hard going to Little League games and nobody was in the stands. It was hard when no one took an interest for me to care.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned from my own experiences, that I wouldn't duplicate that. And I would make somebody as special as I could. I've done a lot of things, but, one thing is I swore that I would never swear in front of my own kids for the first 18 years. And that's not always easy to do. But it only took one day at a time, one activity at a time. And I think that's how you really get through with confidence. So I forgot, I guess I'm with Jason.
Yeah, and we are closely coming up to the hour. So the thing, I would be remiss if I didn't add this. Some of you might know my background's in neurolinguistic programming, amongst other things, but I'm trained in NLP, which is basically using the language of the mind to get the results that you want. And so this little tidbit here about confidence. So, our unconscious mind and our brain, we code things in our brain. And that's how we respond to the world. So how we know we like things, how we know we don't like things. If you like something, most likely the picture's in color, it's bright, it's compelling, it's close. If you don't like something, it's far away, it's black and white, it's kind of muddy picture, stuff like that, usually. So how can we instill confidence in ourselves when we might not feel confident? Well, if you're going to have an event or you're going to be doing something that you're not sure about, Imagine yourself on the inside. So get that picture of yourself doing what it is that you're going to be doing, and make sure that picture shows you showing up the way that you want to. You're upright, you're firm, the picture's in color, it's compelling. What if there's sounds around it, the sounds make you feel good. If there's feelings around it, they make you feel warm. And change that internal picture, because that internal picture is how we see ourselves. And so change that picture to be the way that you want to be seen, and I guarantee you your results will be better. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, wonderful advice. Catherine?
Oh, I love that, Jason, because I'm right there with you. I think that it's something that is important for everyone to be aware of, and for everybody to be able to implement it for themselves, right?
Right.
And going back to what you were talking about, Don, about the quiet confidence, it goes back to the vibration and what you're radiating when you go into that room, because we're vibrating all the time, right?
Right.
And we have a choice as to how we visualize ourselves on the inside. And we also have a choice of what vibration we're aspiring to be vibrating at, right? We may not be able to jump up the scale immediately, but there is something that I can do to take me up a little bit further. And then from there, I can go to the next step, the next step, the next step. And I think, we can jump from time to time, but it's not as easy to stay there. And when we keep developing the muscle, then when we get up to a higher vibrational level, it's much easier to stay there most of the time and be that responder versus the reactor, to be able to evaluate ourselves and how we can improve ourselves and all of these things. And I think that it goes back to confidence is built by what you choose to think, what you choose to feel, and what you choose to do.
Yeah, and that is so true. You do have a choice. Charles?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think one of the things we're talking about is that confidence context. That confidence is something that's a context. And Jason, you painted a good example of creating that context, setting yourself up for success by creating that context. And, I think that confidence is really, Lao Tzu would say that confidence is radical humility. It's not thinking less of yourself, but it's thinking of yourself less. And, the best leaders don't dominate meetings. They create spaces where truth emerges. When it comes to social media, sort of scroll less, create more, let the work speak for itself and mute the noise. And when you're in conflict, the less that you defend, the stronger your position.
Yeah.
Which
I'm
was
sorry.
how Gandhi took on the British Empire. And I dropped a comment in from Lao Tzu, which is a reminder of true strength. A tree that grows too tall attracts the axe.
Yeah, that's a great quote. I was just going to share that. And here's another one. Modern peril, social media's performative expertise versus silent mastery. With realization of one's own potential and self-confidence and one's ability, one can build a better world, the Dalai Lama. And another quote, the one who knows does not speak, the confident need not prove. And, I think to kind of tie it all together, there has to be purpose to your confidence. And what I say is, I'm always trying to figure something out and build something on. And I thought to myself, well, me and Ann have been together almost 54 years now. And I said to myself, well, what can I do or say that will continue to make her as healthy as possible and live as long as possible? Right? Because that's a purpose. And you start to filter things in that filter. Because most people just react. Somebody says something, well, here's something. Or someone gets a little angry and you get angry instead of, okay, that's fine. I found out about 98% of life is like potato. You got an opinion, but it really doesn't make much difference. If someone says, would you like the green plate or red plate? Yeah, I got an opinion. But if you really like the green plates, we're going to be eating on the green plates. And you get less dissonance and you get less resistance, because what comes around goes around. The love you make is the same as the love you take. I mean, if you go back to the Beatles, and it's, what are you putting out there? And some things catch, some things don't, but it doesn't matter, because you're trying for a reason, a purpose. It's not about you. It's about who you have become. And the confidence can only be supported by evolving, getting a little stronger, getting a little bit better, and feeling good about that. Little gains are probably more important than the big blowout that never gets repeated, right? I'd rather get a little treat every day than get a magnificent something and then get let down from it. So we're already at an hour. Next week, we're going to have Harvey Tuck here, which is going to be a great honor. I was on Harvey's show, and it looks like Leslie wants to be on the show. So we'll see if we can make that happen. And I think we're just putting together a wonderful opportunity for ourselves first, to learn and grow with each other. Too many people are focused on the unknown audience instead of the people they're close to. How many people run around and they're helping everybody, when they come home, they don't do anything for anybody. People that are most important to them, they take for granted. And the other ones, they have to perform more than they should. So any last thoughts or comments? Okay, it looks like we'll go. Charles.
Feel the fear and do it anyway.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah, know that we're here for you and with you. And it's nice to be able to come back the next week or so and share things, and know people are concerned and interested and focused on helping you. And knowing there's backup gives you a lot more confidence. So with that said, audience, thank you so much. Actually, the biggest contributors are our panel, not only on the show, but to the comments, and I certainly appreciate that. And with that said, see everybody in a week, if possible, and we'll continue to go forward from there. Thank you very much.